Testing 1 2 3 4. Testing 1 2 3 4. Testing testing.
Well,
Good morning, friends. We have an echo. I just have to get Brendan to mute. Thank you. It's gone. We have no echo. All right. If I stood out in the rain night, my only light a candle 1,000,000 miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. I love to open with that song by Cindy Callett, my friend from Bloomington, Indiana. We are so glad that you're here and so excited about the contents of this program today, even before hearing it. They say you shouldn't clap before you hear the song, but I'm clapping before I hear the song right now as we speak. Moira Smiley has driven several hours to be with us this morning for the amazing coincidence that she and I are friends, and she has another friend who happens to be the speaker this morning, and they happen to be neighbors. That's how they met in Los Angeles. So it's a magnificent coincidence that brought us here together. And not only that, but Moira's a wonderful friend and also just an accomplished songster and author and chorus leader and teacher and all kinds of things, has recorded tons of great stuff and has led all kinds of ensembles. Can't say enough. Moira, thank you for coming down all the way to be with us this morning. Moira Smiley, I'm just thrilled to have you.
Well, this is my great honor. Hello. And to be in the presence of the great storyteller raconteur that is Brendan Hughes. He selected this song as our opening song for the Divine Intervention live at the Community Church of Boston. This is called Days of War, and it's written about how to keep on going. It's a conversation between a bird and a human. The human's asking the bird, how do you keep going when no one's listening? Sit with me, birdie, in the tall tree. The news is bad and there's no relief. How do you fly to the enemy and sing your song so tenderly? Oh, oh. When I fly to the enemy, the fear is high 'cause you don't agree, and tempers flare. Yeah, the cry is war. No one listens anymore. Yeah. Sing that with me. These days of war, little bird, do you fly in fear? Up and away from the hatred here.
It's
Do
just we
you
have crappy
see
speakers.
a meeting ground between our camps where you touched down? Oh yes, sometimes I fly in fear
Somebody,
and I sing
on
so
the chat if
soft
it's okay. Somebody
you
said
cannot
perfect.
hear. But I sometimes see your meeting ground between the
speaker works.
smoke and the battle sounds. Yeah.
No, we're not. Only one of those speakers.
Ooh, these days of war, oh, little bird, why do you fly away? Leave me alone in this silent day. How do you sing in these days of war where no one listens anymore? Well, I fly because I must carry on to love, to feed, to make my home. And I sing to know that love is near, because anger holds the hand of fear. I sing to know that love is near, because anger holds the hand of fear. I sing to know that love is near. Come, courage, take the hand of fear. Yeah. Ooh. And these days of war. Ooh, these days of war. Ooh, these days of war. Ooh, these days of war.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Moira, Smiley, thank you. Thank you. I got a bunch of things to say, and as briefly as I can. Want to just take out the season, which is We do the opposite of what most churches do. We take the holidays off and don't have special pageants or programs or anything. However, there's a couple of things I want to tell you about. One is that on December 19th, which is a Friday, I believe. Is it Friday? Yeah. We're gonna have a very special program, mostly online, but I might gather a few people here. Yeah, Friday 19th. It's me and Magpie, and we've done this a number of times. The group Magpie, which is Greg Artzner and Terry Leonino, and the program is called Holiday Songs You Won't Hear at the Mall. And that's Friday, December 19th. I also want to tell you about some thing that's starting to happen here is that there's an accumulation of beautiful crafts and goods, mostly from El Salvador, but also from Palestine, back in the back. We partner with a store in Martha's Vineyard that's called Olive Branch Fair Trade, and we feature their products, as well as the Teocinte workshop that is a village in El Salvador that I frequent. In fact, I'm going on December 7th, a week from today. And we have all kinds of great stuff, mostly Guatemala cloth, and sewn into handbags, tablecloths, placemats, wallets, anything you can imagine is on there. Some embroidery also that's from a lady named Hilda Caballero and her 3 daughters. This is an example. And there's a whole bunch of them right over there on the coat rack. And this is going to culminate in something that we do every year, which is called a Zoom Bazaar. Zoom Bazaar, which we hold online, announce it, and people just come and we show folks online so that you can shop from anywhere, and we'll send it to you. And you can send us some money, and the proceeds go to these 6 ladies who are part of this co-op. We also have 2 more programs before we take a vacation. The first one is next Sunday, and the speaker is Manisha Gelman, and she's going to be speaking on El Salvador and on the Bukele coolest dictatorship on the planet. Manisha Gelman is a professor at Emerson College, professor of government and history. The Sunday after that, a very special event, December 14th. We are giving our annual Sacco and Vanzetti Award, and if you want to know about this church's connection to the Sacco and Vanzetti case, it goes back to our founding, 1920. We give out an annual award, and this year it goes to 2 recipients. One is the survivors of the USS Liberty, the reconnaissance ship that in 1967 during the 7-Day War was bombed and almost destroyed and sunk by Israel. Bombed and torpedoed. The survivors have a story to tell. It's been covered up, the real motives behind what happened there. The other recipient is the Gaza Sumud Flotilla, the flotilla on which were such people as Greta Thunberg and the songwriter Carsey Blanton. And we're going to hopefully play a song that she wrote about what happened to them and to her. And we will have in person Greg Stoker. I don't know if you know that name, but he's a military veteran, and he was on the flotilla and sent out missives every day about what was happening to them. And he's very skilled. He works with Mint Press News, and he has his own podcast, whose name I do not remember. Anyway, Greg is coming from Texas to join us on December 14th. Then there's the week after that, was 21st. We don't have a program, but somebody took advantage of the absence of a program there and are showing a film and having a party. It's a group called the South Asia Coalition. It's mostly people from India and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. they're one of many groups who meet here. It's just such a proud thing for us to just remember. Muslims for Progressive Values, Fifth Ward Democrats, Extinction Rebellion, Sunrise Movement, 3 different committees of the Democratic Socialists of America, Veterans for Peace, all do organizing right here in this space. I've been thinking about doing a program that brings them all together and gives them each 10 minutes. Anyway, what am I forgetting? I want to also mention the presence here of Joe Rossi from a magnificent thing that happens almost every day at noon. It's called the Daily Antidote of Song, and it's online, and she's going to go off and host it. She'll be in the office hosting it while we're out here enjoying a different program. But sometime, if you can, go on the Daily Antidote of Song. I think it's both on Facebook and YouTube and on Zoom. It's just a wonderful thing, and I try and join in whenever I can. Just wanted to say welcome, Joe. She came down from Henniker, New Hampshire, and will be leaving us just for that. Also, don't want you all to forget some of the regular standouts that happen Tuesday. John, remind me, at noon in front of the new Israeli embassy.
The new Israeli consulate.
New Israeli,
Washington Place.
1 Washington Place on Tuesdays at noon. Noon to 1. Also, Wednesdays in Burlington, an event I've been attending and really just been amazed by the mass of people with amazing signs that gather in front of the Burlington ICE office that's right next to the Burlington Mall. And it's happening every Wednesday, all the way through the winter. And wonderful speakers, and some not so wonderful. I'm referring to Senator Ed Markey, who was there. I have my own axe to grind, but anyway, he was there, and I salute him for having shown up. I think one more musician to plug. With Manisha Gelman next Sunday is our friend Colleen Katau, who has joined us several times before, and she sings a bilingual program of songs in English and Spanish. She will be the music next Sunday. Calvin Airy has been pushing that I not stop this little ritual, which is just a quick reading from one of my favorite authors, Eduardo Galeano from Uruguay. This is called Children of the Days, and there's an entry for each day of the year, and you open it, and not having even read it, you read it, and you are amazed. Galeano wrote a lot of history and commentary, mostly in little vignettes like this, little vignettes. This one is for November 30, and it's called A Date in Paradise. This day in the year 2010 saw the opening of a world conference to defend the environment, number 1001. As usual, nature's exterminators recited love poems to her. It was held in Cancun. No place would have been better. At first sight, Cancun is a picture postcard, but to transform this old fishing village into a gigantic, trendy hotel with 30,000 rooms over the last half-century, dunes, lakes, and pristine beaches, virgin forests, and mangroves were wiped out, along with every other obstacle that nature put in the way of its path to prosperity. Even the beach sand was sacrificed. Now Cancun buys its sand from somewhere else. The gospel according to Eduardo Galeano. And what do the people say? Amen. Amen. Yeah, whatever. Moira's going to come up and do a couple of songs. This is the part that we call the musical message. And you can do anything you want, Moira.
Petition for Brendan Hughes to begin, and then I get to sneak in to the narrative.
You want to go back and forth between the two of you? Okay. Hey, that's even easier. So now I get to introduce Brendan. And of course, I lost my... There's one more thing I have to announce, and I forgot. The spirit of creativity in Cambridge dimmed last week when longtime resident teacher and poet Charles Coe died on Monday from complications related to prostate cancer surgery. His death was sudden and stunned many, in addition to touching people with his words, often delivered in a deep, mellifluous baritone. Coe delivered mentorship, leadership, and community. He was 73. He was an omnipresent figure in local literary circles, the Mass Poetry Festival, long-running literary salons across Cambridge and Somerville, the Writers' Room, the Black Writers Reading Series, arts advocacy boards. If there was a gathering where people were wrestling with words or art or community, chances were good Coe had either helped organize it or slipped quietly into a seat to listen. Charles was scheduled to speak here last Sunday, and we found out about his tragic parting. We will be holding a Shiva gathering next Tuesday. That's day after tomorrow, right here. Anyone who hears this is welcome to come and commune with us as we remember Charles. We will also be celebrating Charles's poetry and writing on the day that I rescheduled him for, which is February 15th. I had talked to him just 2 days before he passed, and he said, I don't think I'm in any condition to speak. And I said, well, you could do it from home by Zoom, or even from a hospital bed. I did that once. And he said, no, let's just reschedule. So February 15th we rescheduled, and now it'll be in his memory, February 15th. Charles Coe presente. Where did he go? Oh, he's the very last one on our newsletter. There's a new newsletter coming out very soon with a whole bunch of just great programs coming up for January and February. Spread the word. Brendan Patrick Hughes is a filmmaker, podcaster, producer, performance artist, and professor who works in feature film, documentary, podcast, theater, and comedy pop-ups. He currently serves as clinical assistant professor of acting for film and media at Sands College of Performing Arts at Pace University in New York City. Other recent projects include the darkly comic mystery feature film Din Din. It's about me, yeah. Available on Apple TV and Amazon Prime, and the documentary The Metal Detector, now streaming on PBS. A friend of mine told me about the podcast Divine Intervention, and I listened to it, and I listened to it over again, and I found Brendan's email address, and as a result, here it is. It's such a wonderful story about something that happened just a few blocks away from here, and we're just so glad to hear more about it, and so glad that we have here a gathering that includes maybe a homecoming of some of those people who remember those days and maybe are inspired by those days to act on these days. Folks, Brendan Patrick Hughes.
Oh, thank you.
You could also use the cordless if you want to walk around.
Oh, thank you.
Which would you
I think let's see. I'm gonna
do it like that?
be tethered to the. Oh, there we go. Testing. Oops. We'll let that go. Oh. Wait a second.
It's probably all you need to make sure.
Is this muted? Muted. There we go. How's that? I thought that was my hearing aids. Turn up the volume. Testing. Now I'm muted again. Sorry, guys. Oh, I see. I keep hitting this. I don't know if you can see this. No, you can't. It keeps saying, turn up the volume, and I click the button, and then it unmutes myself, and then the feedback comes back. It's nice to meet you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Oh, there's some people to admit as well. I'm in charge of the Zoom at the same time. All right, a little of that. Okay. There we are. Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here. Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us. I feel completely at home here. I grew up partly in Stoughton at a place called Packard Manse, which was a peace conference center for the peace movement, where a bunch of ex-clergy lived, ex-priests, monks, and nuns. And it was sort of a commune, and it felt exactly like this, and I feel completely at home. Completely at home. And I also feel a touch of nerves talking about this, because this story is actually very, very, very close to my heart, and it is in a sense my sort of origin story. And I walked around. I'm a director and a professor. I'm everything that Dean, I guess, listed on my bio. and I've done a lot of creative projects over the last however long, since the 90s. And I've walked around pregnant with this story for 25 years. My first notes about it are dated February something 1999, when I lived in Jamaica Plain, and I went to a bar and I thought, I'm gonna make a movie about this crazy story I know about. And then I walked around pregnant, did some interviews with some people. Starting in 2005, I drove to New York with my mom, and I had a little mini disc recorder, and she told me a crazy story that I will never forget. And that led to recording some more interviews in 2009, and you'll see some of those. And that led to writing a screenplay, and that led to nothing. And then that led to maybe adapting it to be a TV show. This also led to nothing. Now we're about 2 decades into the project. And then finally, in 2020, during the pandemic, a friend of mine pointed out that a lot of people are making podcasts these days when they don't know what else to do with a story. And I started this podcast. And here, 5 years later, it took 5 years, is this thing that is out in the world. And it feels really weird for it to be out in the world because it was in my womb for so long. And so I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's called Divine Intervention, and it is a 10-part documentary podcast. And actually, before I go on, I want to say thank you to Dean for emailing me, as such as you did, and having me here. This is such a wonderful place. And thank you, Dean. It's been great to correspond with you, and to have Moira here. Moira and I, and my wife Emily, and my son Oscar, and our late dog Laika, were all roommates, rather housemates. We lived in a trifecta. We lived in a triplex in Los Angeles, and we shared a garden, and I'd sit in the back, and music would waft out of Moira's apartment, and I would think to myself, this is the bohemian life I always dreamed of when I moved to LA. And it was wonderful to get to know her. And when we were putting this podcast together, there are moments in the podcast where we wanted to depict how musical the subjects of the podcast were that I'll be telling you about. And it occurred to me that Moira is a generational talent and incredible at singing and at arranging and things. And there were sweeping moments of spontaneous music that happened during this story. And so I called Moira and asked her to put together some music for the podcast, and you can hear her voice in many of the episodes, singing Amazing Grace, singing Silent Night, singing We Shall Overcome. And is there one more that I'm forgetting?
A single note.
Oh, and a single note, yes. Yes, exactly. And a single note. That proved crucial. So now, I'll tell you a little bit about this podcast. It's award season. So I made this with a production company, and it's award season. And so they recently wrote me, and they said, we need some language to submit this podcast with when we submit it for different things, different types of awards. And so 6 months after releasing it into the world, I wrote the following, and I thought I'd share it with you as a way to start. And it got me writing about this after releasing it and walking around without it in the womb for 6 months. Got me thinking sort of in a grand scale about where it came from. And so this is what I wrote. It starts, it's a heading, A Problematic City. Boston has always been a problematic city for the United States. Scrapes with the king, scrapes with one another, scrapes with the well-behaved rest of the nation. It's the point in the lining of the great American tent where the camel's nose of Irish immigration found an entry point, a loose seam, and in thrust an entire camel of unwashed Catholic peasants in the middle of the 19th century, ruining a pristine city, teeming with a robust counter-narrative to the tidy story of elite Protestants making good on these shores. And when you combine that with the stubborn history of Cinderella sports franchises that repeatedly gall the rest of the country, you've got less a city and more of a splinter wedged into the paw of the American experiment. More Irish, more Catholic, more crass than the rest of the country, more parochial yet more European, meaner, older, angrier, funnier. And its bottom half is the neighborhood of Dorchester. Wait a second. I have to figure out how to advance slides. Oh, I have to do it this way. Okay, there we go. All right. Dorchester is where Boston has tough mornings. The sun is too bright, the wind is too strong, the trees never have leaves, and describe crooked witch finger silhouettes against Newport menthol billboards featuring laughing people who would never set foot there. And there's slush on the floor of Dunkin' Donuts.
And you have to share your screen.
Oh, I did. Oh, that's me now. Oh, darn it. Okay, I got to do this a different way. Hold on a second, you guys. That's hilarious. One moment, please. Please stand by. All right, I go like this, and then, oh yeah, those I can't. I'm not in. Those are somewhere. Those are on a different screen. Hold on a second. All right, how's this? No, now share screen. Now it's not working anymore. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, all right. Am I still the host? Okay. Escape. Uh-oh. Allow. Oh no, everything's going wrong. Everything's going wrong. I was up late dreaming that this would happen, and here it is. Okay, hold on a second. All right, let's see here. One moment, you guys. Can you see that? No, hold on. Okay, stop share. Stop share the screen. No, that's a different, I don't have that here. Okay, I'm going to share the screen, and then I'm going to go over here, advanced portion of the screen, and then share, and then it goes like that. And then I have to go like that. There it is. Okay. No worries. Okay, here we go. Okay. And that tank. There you go. Okay. This might happen every time I advance the slide, you guys. That's the problem. Okay, so play rehearse slideshow. And does this work? Okay. Oh, this might actually work. Hold on a second. Okay. There. Okay, I think we got it. You guys. Okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. Excellent. Okay. So we were talking about Dorchester, slush on the floor of Dunkin' Donuts, but it's got a proud history of way more than its share of apartments full of young activists hell-bent on justice, who love their democracy so much they will go to jail to protect it. And it's perhaps no coincidence, therefore, that the city produced some of the wildest revolutionaries of the 1960s, who would lay down their bodies to stop a war, who had no trouble pitting centuries-old institutions against one another. This podcast is the story of radical nuns in combat boots and wild-haired priests who became cat burglars to sabotage a war. It's the story of a nun who took J. Edgar Hoover to the Supreme Court and won. It's the story of a priest who defied the institutional malaise of his church and built a honeycombed beehive of progressive solutions to modern problems on Park Street. It's got heists, tragedy, a trial of the century, nuns falling in love with priests, priests marrying themselves to divorcees, and a whole generation of otherwise authority-revering Catholics redefining what it means to be a patriot. It's got a group of young people who received a country from their elders, took one look, and immediately said, absolutely not. And now I'm going to advance the slide. May God have mercy on our souls. It worked.
My name's Paul Cumming.
My name's Paul Cumming.
Mass originally.
Great, okay.
Just a Mass originally.
Great, okay. And so I noticed you made some of the. Uh-oh.
How it was I came to be the kind of person I was, at least outspoken, from a rather quiet person, because I never usually spoke out about much of anything when I was a kid.
Okay. Can we start off? Will you just say your names?
Ian Walsh.
Bob Kinane.
Excellent. I think you know what to do about the meaning of all of this.
Of life.
Of life, exactly.
Oh, good, I'm glad. Well, this was fun. I can't wait to see this.
I will give you a DVD of your entire.
And I'll give you the Patrick thing after your dad's.
That might be a little uncomfy there. Let me
Okay.
raise it a little bit so it's.
I know. Look at her
We're
little
gonna have to
portrait.
move.
Christine, you look awesome.
Really?
Look how gorgeous.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I'll go with the compliments.
So okay. So just to start off, just to I guess get warmed up. Could I? You're from Canada? Is that?
I'm from New Brunswick, yeah.
The microphone. Oh, looking good. Looks like you can get an adjustment.
Does he look like Howard Zinn?
This is good. This is how it's looking.
Good, you're not going to shoot me below the waist.
That fan is going in the hallway. Probably that needs to be turned off, huh?
What do you think, B?
Where's the thing?
I'll get it.
It's in the hallway.
I'll get it, hon.
Look at that.
You can look at me.
Oh, look at you, Joanne Hughes.
Okay. Looking good.
Oh, get the phone out of get the phone out of there.
Adorable.
Is she adorable?
Just
One second. Go back to the Zoom. Stop sharing. Oh, microphone. Like this. And then, sorry guys, 1 second.
testing one.
Okay, now this might work. Okay, so I'm gonna try that. Mute yourself here too. Okay. So let's see. I believe this will work. We'll go away from the videos now, and I'm gonna go back to let's see here. 1 second, guys. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Okay. Portion of screen. Do this again, and go over here. Okay. This goes like that. There we are. Okay. I think I have to mute that. Okay, everybody. So, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Can everyone hear me on the Zoom? Okay. So, when the horrors of the Vietnam conflict began and bodies began coming back, Catholics were worried or horrified by napalm and the ever-mounting casualties in the very confusing war. And they saw the draft grinding up an entire generation of American youths, and they knew they had to stop it. But to many of the Catholic activists, the traditional marches and demonstrations were yielding no results. And the Catholic left had its origins in one bizarre story in Minnesota. Now I was going to play you some, some excerpts. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna hit play.
Initial protest wasn't working, so they were banging their heads against the.
Okay, let's try this again. 1 second, everybody.
Initial protest wasn't working, so they were banging their heads against the wall, becoming increasingly convinced that the initial protest wasn't working, so they were banging their heads against the wall, becoming increasingly convinced that the traditional nonviolent route was fruitless against this increasingly terrifying juggernaut of a war.
There it is.
They needed some sort of non-traditional.
Okay.
Initial protest wasn't working, so they were banging their heads against the wall.
We don't see it.
That the traditional non-violent route was fruitless against this increasingly terrifying juggernaut of a war. They needed some sort of non-traditional, in-your-face, loud statement. Something the grinders of the war machine could actually fucking hear, could smell. And then, this zany thing happened in Minnesota. One day, a young man named Barry Bondus received a telltale envelope in the mail that he knew was his draft. Barry's father headed immediately to the local draft board during the next public hearing and pleaded to the local selective service board members that he was worried about the draft because he had 12 sons. One board member was a war
who had been injured in battle and didn't understand why everyone else shouldn't serve as well. You got 12 sons, the veteran shot back. Well, where are the rest of them? This made Barry's father so angry, he stormed out of the hearing and formed a plan with his sons. All 12 Bondus boys then spent the next few days defecating in a bucket in their bathroom. Then, Barry, the one who had received the draft notice, brought the bucket into the draft board and plopped it onto the counter, saying, "Here are the rest of my brothers. What do you want me to do with them?" To which the secretary on duty said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And Barry said, "Oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about? Then I'll just put them over here." And he marched past her and threw open some drawers and started dumping the feces all over the draft files. He eventually served 18 months for destruction of government property, but had no regrets.
Excuse me, we don't see or hear anything.
And caught the attention of activists as the first attack on a draft board. And this incident became known as the movement that started the movement.
I think the Zoom people can't hear anything. Is that the case?
No, we hear nothing on Zoom and we don't see anything. You're nice to look at, but we like to see the program.
That is just audio. That is not video.
Okay.
So that is just the audio from the podcast. There's nothing to look at but my face at the moment. Okay, so.
Well, you had slides before.
I'm hearing something in the background.
All right, hold on, everybody. We're gonna try sharing again. And hold on. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Zoom creates more problems than it solves. Here we are. Can we see that? Yeah. There we go. Okay. There we go. So you guys. Yeah, I think maybe we don't do that. Does that make it a little better? A little better. Today, I feel like the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Oh, thank you. Testing. Okay. I have to mute this guy right here. Okay. But hopefully the Zoom people can still hear. Okay. So, everybody. Now, this happened. So, in Minnesota, this incident occurred where Barry Bondus dumped a bucket of feces on his local draft board. And there was a priest named Phil Berrigan who had been looking desperately for some way to protest the war that would have some teeth to it. And when he heard about that, he thought, oh, attacking the draft board itself, that's perfect. And he was a Josephite priest in Baltimore. And he took that idea and he gathered 3 other people. And they got some, initially their idea was they were going to draw their own blood and dump their own blood on the draft files and made some attempts that proved fruitless because it's actually, if you're not a trained medical professional, not easy to draw your own blood. And they went to a local Polish market and bought some duck's blood. And they put them in Mr. Clean bottles and headed to the local draft board in the Customs House in downtown Baltimore. And here, hopefully, is another excerpt. So one moment.
October 27th, 1967, Baltimore, Maryland, Charm City. These 4 men arrived at the Customs House doors just as an armed guard had wandered away. They walked into the draft board office and asked if they could see their personal files. As soon as the secretary went to the filing cabinets, they knew where the draft files were. They marched around the counter, seized the drawers, and dumped the contents of their Mr. Clean bottles on every file they could, shocking the clerks. Then, one of the raiders handed out copies of the Bible to make a point about the war and what this office was doing, and he was immediately bonked on the head with it. After that, their action was complete. And there was an awkward pause. As they just stood there, not making a break for it. The clerk staring at them, the raiders staring back. The four men then waited for over an hour with hands.
How are we doing here?
Let's just keep doing it as best we can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Dean. Okay. All right, so I can mute myself again. So during the trial of the Baltimore Four, so they were all stood there and waited to be arrested. And during the trial of the Baltimore Four, it was revealed by one of the military men who was on the stand that they only had one copy of any given draft record in any of these draft boards. And when the movement heard that, they thought, oh, so that means if we destroy a draft record, that saves one human life. And they can prevent people from getting sucked into the war machine. And so here's Bob Kinane to explain that a little bit further.
You should explain to young people that once the draft file was destroyed, it was gone.
It was gone.
It was
before
pre-computer days.
Right.
So then what happened is after they were, hold on a second. So after Phil Berrigan was sentenced with the Baltimore Four, he was sentenced to prison and was given about 6 weeks to get his affairs in orders before he had to turn himself in. And so he immediately tried to do another action as quickly as possible before he had to turn himself in. And he recruited his brother Dan Berrigan, who is a famous poet. We all know Dan Berrigan. And on May 17th, 1968, along with 7 other Catholics, they hit a draft board in the Tony suburb of Catonsville, Maryland, marching in broad daylight.
May he make it possible for this action for others to live? May he make it more difficult for men to kill one another? We make our prayer in the name of that God whose name is peace, and decency, and unity, and love. Amen.
And here is a bit of the podcast talking about it. Hold on. There we are.
They do fire, same thing.
Historian Charles Mekonis.
Fire is an ancient symbol in religious rituals. You know, that's how you do sacrifices.
The Berrigan brothers gathered 9 volunteers and chose the wealthy suburb of Catonsville, Maryland for their next action. At 12:30 p.m. on May 17, 1968, these 9 Catholics entered the draft board in the Knights of Columbus building, carrying wire baskets.
Mrs. Murphy, will you tell us about the day when the Catonsville 9 came?
Well, it was a gorgeous day, beautiful day.
Mrs. Murphy was finishing her lunch with 2 other coworkers when she heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and a few young men stood in the doorway.
And I said to him, "May I help you, sir?"
Then she recognized Phil Berrigan from the newspapers.
As soon as I looked in his face, I thought, oh my Lord, something's gonna happen.
The 9 Catholics, who had become infamously known as the Catonsville 9, started scooping up draft files into their wire baskets.
And I think they were just as terrified as we were in a way.
They started down the steps, but Mrs. Murphy intervened.
Well, I took a hold of the wire basket and I pulled and tugged and tried to get away from them while they were 2 very large men.
They continued outside.
And they had manufactured some of this napalm that they had made themselves. And of course, they set these records on fire.
So, one second. This was a huge deal. The Catonsville 9, of course, became a gigantic sensation. Dan Berrigan was very shrewd in that he turned the trial into a play, and then it was turned into a movie, and it became a massive sensation that touched off a bunch of other draft board raids. And it was very important that the next draft board raid not be one that included the Berrigan brothers, lest this become sort of a Berrigan brother branded movement. And that is where Bob Kinane comes into the picture, where Bob Kinane was somebody who was part of the Milwaukee 14. He and 13 others decided to hit the Brumder building in downtown Milwaukee and disable the draft throughout the city. And right beforehand, they held an impromptu liturgy in a hotel room. And here's more about it from the podcast.
That the line between
the sacred and the profane can become very blurry when you're changing the world for the better. The 14 then set out on foot for the Brumder building. They successfully talked the keys off the cleaning woman they found inside.
Kind of protested, but she gave it to us.
And one of the men stayed with her the rest of the time they were there, just trying to comfort her. They had choreographed and rehearsed their moves down to the second. They went to work, stuffing over 10,000 draft files of would-be inductees into burlap sacks. But then, suddenly, another cleaning woman was standing in the doorway and shouting at them. They had to physically restrain her, which they all spoke of later with regret. That altercation abruptly cut short the action. So they carried the bags they had outside, leaping and shouting and singing. They brought the files across the street to a little triangular pocket park, dumped them on the ground, threw napalm on them, and dropped a match.
And it was quite an event. Here's Bob talking about it further.
Yeah, the kid got it from somebody. He got it from the manual, how to make napalm. There's a manual, a military manual, and he tried it out in the dump in Milwaukee. Oh, it scared the hell out of me, I'll tell you. Woo!
Bob was somebody who lived with us in Packard Mance, and I got to know him. He was like a second father to me. He was wonderful. He was a lot like Steve Martin, just incredibly funny and dear. And here he is talking with Ann Walsh.
We were the first ones to go to jail. Rah, rah, but it wasn't anything. But jail was a very, I always say to people, jail is a nice place to have been from. I don't particularly would enjoy going back, but it was an education, and I would say a bigger education than most of my schooling.
So Bob and the rest of the Milwaukee 14 went to jail for 2 years in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and came back to Boston as sort of conquering heroes and were celebrated when they returned. Meanwhile, Dan Berrigan had decided not to turn himself in on the date he was supposed to start his prison sentence for the Catonsville 9 action, and instead went on the lam, which drove the FBI insane because they knew how to find people in the underworld, but had no idea how to find someone who was staying on a network of upper middle class couches.
They were looking for Dan Berrigan. He had not turned himself in as he was supposed to, a member of the Catonsville 9, found guilty, appeals turned down, supposed to turn themselves in and go to jail. But several of them did not. Phil Berrigan, Dan Berrigan, Mary Moylan, 3 of the Catonsville 9 did not turn themselves in. And then there's a huge anti-war rally at Cornell University, gymnasium jammed with students, several thousand students. And there's a rumor that Dan Berrigan is going to show up. And the place is full of FBI agents. In fact, he suddenly does show up on stage. He shows up when what is supposed to be a Passover ceremony, and they open the door for Elijah. It's part of the Passover ceremony. At one point you open the door and Elijah comes in. So they open the door on stage and Dan Berrigan comes in. And you see all over the gym the FBI people scurrying towards the stage, from all over. And then the lights go out. The place becomes dark. When lights go up again, he's gone. He's been spirited away in one of the puppets of the Bread and Puppet Theater. They have huge puppets, and they put him in one of these puppet things and spirited him away to a farm there, not far from Ithaca, New York.
I interviewed Howard Zinn 6 months before he died in his house in Wellfleet, Massachusetts, and he was kind enough to sit down with me, and we had a wonderful time talking about all of this, and it was just invaluable, the things he shared with me. All of this led Ann Walsh, who was a postulant nun at the time at the Sisters of St. Joseph in Brighton, to radicalize although she began, as, like they all did, as a deeply reverent cradle Catholic.
My back porch looked right over into the church. And so it just seemed like a beautiful place, like a sweet place and a true place. I think I was an extremely devout kid because I loved the liturgy. Because as I got older, when I say older, like 5th grade, I used to spend a lot of my time with the nuns in the sacristy, arranging flowers and putting candles and candlesticks and polishing brass.
So Bob Kinane was Anne Walsh's father confessor when she was in the convent, and they got to know each other very well. And after seeing what Bob had done in Milwaukee, Anne decided to travel to the Bronx to meet Phil Berrigan and volunteer to do an action. And this action became known as the New York Eight. And here's an excerpt.
Summer 1969. 881 Girard Avenue in the Boogie Down. Today, it's a key food marketplace. In '69, it contained most of the draft records in the Bronx. On a Friday afternoon, 8 young Catholics planned to descend on that address, intent on pilfering the draft records inside. Among them, a very terrified Anne Walsh, who was about to become a criminal. Anne would eventually be the mastermind behind Paul Cooming's political asylum at the Paulus Center, but that was still 2 years off. Right now, she was a rookie outside agitator getting ready to break into a federal office for the first time.
I was so terrified.
Anne was the daughter of a decorated World War I vet who had many more reasons not to do this than to do it.
I was just not accustomed to this whole genre, breaking and entering.
Last we saw her, she was starting her own renegade order of sisters in Dorchester called the Bread Community. And inspired by her father confessor Bob Kinane, she had traveled to the Catholic Left HQ in the Bronx to be part of the Catholic resistance. She had left her convent, the Sisters of St. Joseph, to burn with the spirit of her times. But that would mean, in the common parlance of the movement, putting her body where her mouth is. And that's where the switch from mere dissent to active resistance is frankly scary as shit.
I just wanted to have done it and have my name attached to it, but not too many people read about it who didn't like me.
Like many who came before and after her, Anne Walsh was standing at a precipice. In the movement, when a new person was on the verge of doing something illegal, for which they probably would go to jail, movement leader Phil Berrigan talked about a process of removing layers of fear, like the taking off of coats. First, you remove the layer of not wanting to disappoint your parents. Then you remove the layer of not wanting to lose your job. And finally, you remove the fear of going to jail. Once that coat was off your shoulders, you were ready.
So we studied the building for weeks and weeks to try to figure out all variables.
They developed a plan for Anne and another raider to walk into the building during business hours, late on a Friday afternoon, and hide themselves in a particular stairwell that had a window facing across the street.
The staircase window.
There, some co-conspirators would crouch on a rooftop, watching the activity in the building, and alert Anne with painted signs when the coast was clear to let everybody in. But
the FBI knew that the Bronx thing was going to happen.
They had some.
So there we are. So that was the New York Eight, and that was the first action where they figured out how not to get arrested. And the thing that I found particularly interesting, covering the whole Catholic left movement, was hearing how the movement evolved. Because it began with the Berrigan brothers. They were sort of the first wave. And they thought that what you should do is get arrested and put pressure on the system, as Dorothy Day always said, and do these symbolic actions that would win hearts and minds. But the younger crowd, beginning with Anne Walsh and some other younger people that started to come into the movement, wanted to directly grind down the war machine. And so starting with the New York Eight, they figured out how to not get arrested by claiming responsibility. And so the New York Eight, including Anne, had a press conference where they merely claimed responsibility, and because they had hit two boards, one in the Bronx and one in Queens, They had 2 different attorney generals, and there were 8 of them, and they said 4 of us take responsibility for the one in the Bronx, the other 4 take responsibility for the one in Queens. And we don't know which is which. And the attorney generals, it created too much red tape where they just couldn't be accused of the crime. And so therefore, they were free to go and raid again. And this was something that became crucial for the movement to know how to continue to raid actions rather than fill up the jails, because as the historian Charles Vicona said, eventually it would be known as the Catholic nobody left, because everybody would be in prison and then it would be all over. And so Anne became, after this, a recruiter for the movement and recruited her downstairs Dorchester neighbor, Paul Cooming. And he was desperate to get involved in these actions and fight against the war. And so she brought him to a bar in Cambridge to meet with Phil Berrigan. And here's his story of that night.
Anne felt that I was ready to do the draft board action, and Phil said there's no way a kid 20 years old or whatever I was at the time, I think I was, 21 maybe, is ready to do this, And so he wanted to question me. So we sat at the bar. I wasn't 21 yet because I couldn't drink, I remember. But we met at a bar, and he said, when we got done talking, he told Anne, well, I guess it's okay. You can invite him to meetings in New York and Philadelphia or outside Philadelphia, and we'll see how things go.
Paul was very young and became a huge part of the movement, doing raid after raid and performing a raid every 3 months or so. He was part of the Boston 8, and he was able to hit his own draft board in Dorchester. He grew up in the Franklin Hills Housing Project. And he was deeply impassioned, and eventually so impassioned that he ripped up his draft card and mailed it back to the federal government with a letter saying he refused to participate in the draft, which eventually meant that the long arm of the law would catch up to him, and he received a summons to appear and answer for this crime of not having his draft card on his person. And he, to his knowledge, he believes he's the only person who ever was convicted of not carrying his draft papers because that was against the law at the time, and they knew he wasn't because he had mailed them back to them. And so he and Anne Walsh cooked up a scheme to harbor Paul inside a Catholic church instead of appearing in court, because they knew that the police and the FBI were full of Catholics, and they would have a hell of a hard time busting into a Catholic church and dragging them out. But this would mean finding a Catholic church that would be willing to harbor a draft fugitive. And that is where Patrick Hughes enters the picture. But before we continue with this part of the story, I'd love to bring Moira Smiley back up.
Wonderful.
To give us another number.
So just a New York songwriter. Her name is Laura Nero. She's written all kinds of songs, and this is one of them. It's called "Save the Country." Come on, people, come on, children, come on down to the Glory River. Gonna wash you up, gonna wash you down. Gonna lay that devil down. We're gonna lay that devil down. Come on, people, come on, children. There's a king at the Glory River, and the precious king, he loved the people to sing. Oh, there were babes in the blinking sun. They sang, we shall overcome. I got fury in my soul. Fury's gonna take me to the glory. Gold in my mind, I can't study
this is where Patrick Hughes enters the picture. Patrick had just been put in charge of the Paulus Center downtown on Park Street, across from the Boston Common. Patrick had arrived at the Paulist Novitiate Seminary in 1962, a little place called Mount Paul in Oak Ridge, New Jersey. There was a little pond on campus, and he immediately convinced his seminary brothers they should build a little sailboat together when he arrived. The results of which were instant camaraderie against the strictures of seminary life and special permission to leave and go to the hardware store in town, which other brothers were not allowed to go to. And this is the boat they built right here. He arrived just in time for the start at the seminary of the Second Vatican Council in Rome, which happened at the behest of the roly-poly peasant Pope John XXIII, who, to quote Jim Carroll, saw the church he inherited as having failed at the greatest moral test of the 20th century when it remained silent during the Holocaust. So, when this Pope took over in 1957, he called for a once-in-a-century ecumenical council to drag the church into the 20th century. And the first vote would be on switching from the Catholic Mass from Latin to the local vernacular. And this was an important vote because back when Catholic Masses were in Latin, the priests faced away from the congregation and sort of uttered some mumbo-jumbo that the congregation didn't understand. And it was all it sat all of the power inside of the priests. And what this very liberal Pope wanted to do was take some of that priestly power and give it back to the people by making the masses in a language that the people could actually understand. And so he, in the first vote of this ecumenical council, the Second Vatican Council in 1962, in October of 1962, was trying to build a coalition of liberal bishops and cardinals who would vote in order for this to happen. But the first vote was interrupted by the Cuban Missile Crisis. They had to cancel the vote, and the Cuban Missile Crisis happened when, of course, missiles in Cuba were spotted by Jim Carroll's father, who was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Jim Carroll was one of Patrick's seminary brothers at the seminary at the time, and also now a big Catholic thinker, I'm sure you guys have all heard of. And the world stood on the brink of destruction. The United States Navy established an embargo around Cuba as Russian tankers with more missiles sped across the Atlantic for a showdown. And behind the scenes, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Pope John XXIII made phone calls to Khrushchev and Kennedy, and said he would be pleading for peace on the Vatican radio. And it was an opportunity for both of them to walk away from the conflict with dignity. And after the Pope appeared on Vatican radio pleading for peace during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev made sure that the Pope's plea ran above the fold in the Pravda, and then turned his ships around the next day. And the Catholic Church's liberals were emboldened and won the vote thereafter for the vernacular. And for Patrick, at the seminary, he saw that a priest had basically saved the world. And here he is with his sister, Joanne, at Mount Paul. And by the time he was ordained and stationed at the Paulus Center in Boston with his very good friend Floyd, he had been completely radicalized by what he had seen unfold in the late 60s outside the walls of the seminary, and he was ready to join the fight. And this is Marianne Hughes, who talks a little bit about when they arrived at the Paulus Center.
So when Patrick and Floyd arrived at the Paulus Center, they're ready to take on the city of Boston. They're ready to take on poverty. They're ready to take on hunger and racism and the war. And they're ready to set up the Paulus Center as a vehicle and guns blazing for this kind. They're go. And they're ready to take on the city to take on poverty, to set up the Paulus Center, this kind of bringing the church alive. And they were going to do getting a screwdriver and going into the chapel. Do it through the church.
Which they did on their first day.
They'll celebrate.
When Floyd and Patrick arrived
at the policy. The kneelers.
They were going to do it.
The kneelers.
Church
Floyd
from
arrived and started unscrewing the kneelers because that was the old church. This was the idea. But when Patrick and Floyd arrived and got to the Paula Center, they found a very traditional place that was very slow to adopt the Vatican II spirit, and it was full of musty old traditions. Here's Patrick's sister, Joanne.
Really hated all of that. He really almost hated all of that. He really almost hated everything that was whatever some people would call traditional.
Patrick and Floyd, when they first got to the Paula Center, got into a dust-up with their Father Superior because the Father Superior wanted to charge people for candles to light the candles in the sanctuary, and they said candles given freely are just as sacred, wouldn't you say? And so they decided this was the hill they were going to die on, and they refused to do any low masses while the candles were for sale in the sanctuary. And the Father Superior was so enraged at them that he sent them to the basement of the Paula Center and told them to start an education center because he didn't want it. He wanted them out of his sight and didn't want to deal with them anymore. But instead of starting a boring education center, as they've been asked, they started about 1 million nonprofit initiatives. They started an ESL tutoring, they started free psychological counseling, a lunch film series, rehabilitation for people having trouble fitting into society, and something called the Wednesday Night Supper Club.
Or you can pause it, Homer. You can pause it and come back to it.
Which, here's a
Why not? Why not, Homer? See, there is a way to pause it, right?
Ambitious plan was to open a soup kitchen. But they hated how patronizing soup kitchens felt.
Their most ambitious plan was to open a soup kitchen. But they hated how patronizing soup kitchens felt for the clientele. And then they came across an idea.
Based on a program that the Little Brothers of the Poor did in France for the poor people of Paris.
Anne Tobin, or just Tobin, who was at this point a fellow volunteer with Christine.
Where they were brought to a place for dinner and they put linen tablecloths on the table and silverware and plates and glasses so that they were served in dignity as opposed to like a soup line where you're just putting a ladle of soup in somebody's bowl as they're walking by.
Instead of a soup kitchen, Patrick and Floyd started the Wednesday Night Supper Club.
So it was a sit-down dinner with tablecloths and silverware, and then the food was all being prepared in the kitchen.
Their supper club was based on the simple idea that not only do the hungry have a right to food, but they have a right to eat it with dignity. Hungry people who came didn't stand in line to get food. They were waited on by volunteers like Tobin and Christine. They were brought entrees, coffee, and dessert, and they actually paid a dime or a quarter for the service.
He was passionate about ending hunger,
Marianne.
about how unnecessary it was that anybody in this country or anyone the world over went to bed hungry, and there was no reason that we couldn't eradicate hunger. And it was a matter of raising consciousness and changing minds.
When Patrick started the Wednesday Night Supper Club in 1969, it drew a lot of people to their basement.
But the problem with all these programs that they started in the basement was that it required a lot of money. And the Father Superior was not going to build any extra money into the budget, which was already very much crushed by modern day, to support all of their wild ideas. And that's when Patrick had an idea that would basically literally change the world. Now is a good time, let's see, to bring up, hold on a second. First I'm gonna play one more excerpt, and this is about what Patrick did in order to raise money for his Wednesday Night Supper Club in the basement.
But they had started so many programs in their basement.
But they had started so many programs in their basement and had so many huge ideas for the place that they had ballooned the budget.
But that required some money.
Floyd.
Well, there's no money.
Patrick and Floyd had harnessed the energies of the young and built a bona fide army of do-gooding hellraisers. So they took this opportunity to make a statement. And that's when Patrick put together a plan that literally, and I mean this, changed the world.
The following Sunday was the first Walk for Hunger.
It was at this moment that Patrick started the Walk for Hunger. This was the project all those people in Patrick's office were working on when Marianne walked in.
The thing about it was a very ingenious idea.
This is Bob Kamane from the Milwaukee 14.
Where Patrick Genius saw it first, in a sense, was that people like to do things in order to raise money for good causes, like rather than just going door to door or asking somebody to donate over TV or something like that. There was an action performed.
Stuck for money, but surrounded by youthful energy, Patrick started the first pledge walk in the United States.
Where the people raising the money feel good about it, and the people giving the money feel good about it because, oh, you walk 20 miles, that's great. I'll give you so much a mile and things like that. So it was participation that was really key.
And his simple idea quickly went viral. These days, there are hundreds of walks and runs and marches for charity throughout the United States. And if you're from Boston, you know all about the Walk for Hunger. This year will be the 55th walk. It's a long-standing testament to the better angels of Bostonians, and one of our most important rites of spring.
So this is a good
But
time
here's the
to
thing
bring up Marianne Hughes, who joins us, née Woodward, Marianne Hughes was an eyewitness at of the goings-on at the Paulus Center, and she walked into the Paulus Center when it was buzzing with all of this activity. And I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit about that.
About the Paulus Center and what was happening. When I first came to the Paulus Center, I walked into the building, and literally it was alive. Like it was an inanimate object, but it was completely alive. And the first day I walked in, a friend of mine had introduced me. I had been a Vista volunteer. I was in Laredo, Texas, and had just come back after a somewhat traumatic experience in that I had with me 2 children by myself. So I came back with 2 children, and I was living on welfare in Dorchester at the time. And this friend from Texas had said, oh, you've got to go meet my best friend, Patrick Hughes. He's at the Paulus Center. And I was at, for those of you I can see are old enough, it would have been the week of the Cambodian invasion in Kent State. And it was a time of such even more trauma that had happened. And there was an enormous demo on the Boston Common. And I looked across the street and I was like, oh my God, that's where the Paulus Center is, where that guy is that Jack told me I should meet. However, did I really want to meet a priest? I was there with my 2 kids, no husband, living on welfare. What exactly what were we going to talk about exactly, So, but I went in out of loyalty to my friend and met Patrick, who came downstairs, not in a collar, but came downstairs in his blue jeans and button-down shirt and brought me up to the walk office. And it was alive with such enthusiasm. It was unbelievable. And he invited me to come back and say, why don't you come back to Mass on Sunday and get to know what's happening here. And so I went back several Sundays and finally got to meet people within the community and really began to understand that this building was a true hub of social justice in the city. It was absolutely incredible. And what emerged over the next couple of years, it was a headquarters for the anti-war movement, as was the Newman House and some of the other Newman houses like MIT and other colleges. So there was a whole network in Boston of anti-war activists, but there were these kind of hubs. So the Paulus Center, when we would come in for masses and stuff, there'd be 2,000 people over a weekend coming in. And Patrick, who was a polyglot, I mean, he was just pretty much could do anything. He was doing the liturgies some of them sharing them with Floyd, running the music group, organizing the Walk for Hunger, fighting with Scarsdale, who was their bosses, being called in by Cardinal Medeiros, for breaking so many laws and just raising hell. But the place was so alive, and I've often thought back to those times, the early 70s, that was an opportunity I've always felt where the Catholic Church, if the American Catholic Church had broken away and had actually gone for married priests, women, being able to sell, that really would have changed the world. And that's what they were after. Jim Carroll was having women distribute communion in 1970. He got hauled in to Medeiros. There was all kinds of just taking it on and living it, like living their beliefs, knowing they could really, truly make change. And so you're about to tell a story of the sanctuary, right? Mm-hmm. So then, so as the Paula Center was just alive and doing so much, it was absolutely incredible. It was clear to people in the anti-war movement that this would be the Catholic Church that would host the sanctuary for Paul Kooming, and that becomes the next part of the story, right?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Mother. So I think there's a lot of technical stuff that is frustrating our Zoom compatriots, and I am very sorry to you guys. So instead, I'm going to, I think, not play any more of the excerpts, but just sort of talk about what happened. Now, this brings us, so we go back a little bit to Ann Walsh and Paul Kooming. And here we are. Oops, hold on a second. Well, you've seen what they look like already. In fact, I'm just gonna, stop sharing. I'm just gonna talk. Okay, so Ann Walsh and Paul Kooming. Now, Paul Kooming was, to refresh you, the kid from Dorchester who started raiding constantly but ripped up his draft card. Ann Walsh was the combat booted nun who, inspired by Bob Kinane and his work with the Milwaukee 14, became a recruiter, became very deep to the center of this underground Catholic left. And Ann and Paul thought if they could hide Paul in a Catholic church, then they could really kind of tweak the Boston Police Department, which was all Irish Catholics, and the FBI, also Irish Catholics. And so they found the Paula Center because Patrick was doing all this crazy stuff. And it took some convincing. They met a couple times at the Peter Pan in Kenmore Square to go over the logistics and everything. And then Mary Ann harbored Paul for 2 weeks in her apartment in Dorchester, hiding him before the sanctuary so that the FBI wouldn't find him. And it was her job to sneak Paul into the church while all of his friends went to the courthouse where his trial was being held. And a bunch of things went wrong. They arrived at Park Street to go into to sneak Paul into the Paula Center, and Park Street is filled with squad cars because the FBI had been tipped off and they're waiting for Paul, and so they had to sneak Paul in. You can listen to the podcast to find out how they sneak Paul into the Paula Center, and they didn't know what to expect. While Paul was in the Paula Center hiding, his friends and his parents were in the courthouse seeing Judge Charles E. Wyzanski, who's cast a long shadow over the Boston criminal justice system at the time. He actually in later years would tell Patrick that he was a unrepentant scofflaw for how many parking tickets he had, etc. So in any case, Paul's father went onto the witness stand instead of Paul and said, "I'm here to tell you that my son will not be coming to answer for this crime today, and he is in the Paula Center right now, and he is not coming out until the war is over." And then there was a big march. Everyone stood up and they marched down Tremont Street, and they all marched into the Paula Center. And this wild event began. And Paul and the organizers, including Mary Ann and Patrick and others, didn't know how it would turn out. They thought perhaps the FBI and the police would march right in and grab Paul and take him away minutes after this whole thing began when they found out where he was. However, their plan, their gamble, worked. And here's what's crazy is the American bishops, of course, had come out in favor of the war and said that the Vietnam War was a good thing. So Patrick thrusting the Paula Center against the Department of Justice was pitting basically two gigantic institutions against one another. and it was a massive gamble. But the cops outside were pacing and pacing, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to go in and get Paul. And it turned into a 3-day extravaganza, art festival, where the doors were open and people were coming in and out, posters were put up, giant felt banners, songs were played, skits were performed, workshops were held, and the press was there constantly, and it was gigantic news, and was a huge event that could not possibly have turned out better for the people who were involved. And there were even some children who were there, including Marianne's daughter, Kristen, who was also with us. Would you say a few things about what it was like to be in the Paula Center in those 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, I was very young. Hi, I'm Kristen, Marianne's daughter, Brendan's sister. I was very young, and I can't talk about part of it because you didn't set it up, but how we got Paul in.
Oh, you can tell. You want to tell that story?
I'll tell you how we got Paul in. I don't want to get people upset. Okay. All right, perfect. So we arrived, it was my brother and I, and we were very, very young, but I have very vivid memory in a very snapshotty way. We had Paul with us. Paul was wearing a cape. And we were gonna go to the Paula Center. We took the train, the Red Line, into this massive crime. Red Line from Dorchester to Park Street. Got off. They look up. It's filled with FBI and police, and they're like, "Oh shit!" And they go into the Brighams, which was right there at Park Street, and sitting trying to figure out how to get Paul into the Paula Center through the crowd. And I'm very, very, very little, probably 4 or 5. And what I can remember is Paul's coat, holding his hand, the energy of the anxiety. And Paul had either applied there or before we got on the train a little bit of makeup. Had the hood. It was very au courant, the outfit that he was wearing. And they were marching from the courthouse. And they could hear the marchers singing, so they just fell in line. And we just fell in line. And Paul was holding my brother and my hand. Our brother's name is Joe. And he just looked like a girl going into the sanctuary. And I remember just snaps of the sanctuary, which was sleeping on the pews. And the Paul Center was a second home for us. We spent so much time there, and being downstairs, for the performances, there was always stuff going on. It was super welcoming. One of the things, another detail, and I'll get off the stage, was during the sanctuary, my mom's roommate and our beloved aunt, Sarah Tosi, who features in the she's unbelievable, just beautiful person. She's in the podcast. I wanted to know what the host, the body of Christ everyone was talking about, tasted like, because what we had downstairs in the basement was bread, naturally, wheat, naturally, torn, not cut, naturally. And so Sarah and my mom broke into the sacristy. Unconsecrated. She needs you to know, as a good Catholic girl, it was unconsecrated, and got me a bag of hosts. No, I had the bag. It's my story. I'm telling the story. Don't fact check me. And just and I remember putting the host in my mouth and being so profoundly disappointed. I'm like, wow. And formed the roof of my mouth like a denture plate. I was like, oh, this is the body of Christ. But I do remember the energy of the being scared, being excited, feeling like I was doing something. I felt like my participation mattered, and I was little. I was justice. And 2 more details, which was after Paul was taken out of the sanctuary, because the sanctuary did have to finally end, we went to the Filibuster, which was the restaurant next door, which was there forever because it was the Filibuster right near the State House. And just the crying of the adults, and they were children. When I say adults, let's just do this. my mom was 20 when she had me, and I was maybe 4, so we're talking about 24-year-olds. And just that sense of, we're talking about like this moment now, in this city now, and just like I was a very little person, and I was always trying to figure out, I wasn't that little, I was this little. I was always trying to figure out like what it meant to participate, like to contribute, to be a part of something, to put my body where it was supposed to be. And Ann Tobin, who we've heard from, we were riding in to the Paula Center. This was not during the sanctuary, but before. But Daniel Berrigan had been sent to jail, and he was going to prison, and everybody was like sort of trying to figure out what to do and how to keep the movement going. And I gave up. I was like, what was the biggest contribution I could make to the movement? Like, my pacifier. So I gave up my pacifier on the train for Daniel Berrigan. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
This was fascinating about, I did a bunch of posters about Sacco and Vanzetti, and I know you do the Sacco and Vanzetti Award here at the Boston, the Community Church of Boston. When Paul was arrested from the sanctuary, he was kept in a jail cell for 3 weeks, and during that time he did a hunger strike. He only drank coffee and had an absolutely splitting headache by the time he was put before the judge, who released him on his own recognizance because he sort of agreed with what he had done. The jail cell Paul stayed in after he was arrested from the sanctuary is the same jail cell Sacco and Vanzetti were kept in the entire time that they were held. The movement would ultimately get this sort of Darth Vader figure in J. Edgar Hoover, whose early work was to put Sacco and Vanzetti in prison, and so he sort of bookended that in an interesting way. So here's what's interesting to me about what happened at the Paula Center in February of 1971. It seems to me that in movements for change, there are often sort of 2 schools of thought. There are the outside agitators, who would be the people who raided the draft boards and were trying to grind down the war machine, like Ann and Paul and Phil Berrigan. And then there are inside incrementalists, and the people who are trying to change institutions from the inside. And this would be Patrick and Floyd, who were trying to wrestle the Catholic Church from the inside into something that would be a world-saving organization, which it really could. They came this close before Paul VI clawed back all of the Vatican II reforms. And often never the twain shall meet. You've got the outside agitators look askance at the inside incrementalists. The inside incrementalists roll their eyes at the outside agitators. But this moment at the Paula Center was one where they came together for one glorious moment. And it was an incredible result that happened, where it seemed like the universe itself conspired to make this the most successful event it possibly could have. And what I learned making this podcast, more than anything else, is that we need both, frankly. We need outside agitators to put pressure from the outside on the system. We need inside incrementalists to get ugly first downs and just move the chains up the field, And working together instead of squinting our eyes at one another is really the way that we can actually budge the needle. And this, I did not realize when I started working on this, which was during the Biden administration, that there would necessarily be another Trump administration. And I did not realize how timely this podcast would be when it came out, in terms of it being a playbook for institution disruption, and for the ways in which we need to greet this sort of terrifying moment that we're in, where everything feels like it's on thin ice, and civilization itself feels really like it's hanging in the balance. And it feels, in my darkest moments, it feels like the right is having its 60s right now, and that's terrifying to think about, because how do we answer something like that, And I hope that what this podcast can ultimately do is provide the young generation that I work with every day. I'm a professor in New York at Pace University, and I work with young people who, just like these young people when they were the same age, are receiving a world that their very gut instinct has them saying, absolutely not. And what they need is ways to disrupt the machine of authoritarianism that's putting its boot on their neck, you know, and ways to do things. What is the equivalent of raiding a draft board right now? What are the ways that you can put your body where your mouth is? These are the questions that the podcast asks and the ways that I think it can be relevant to a modern audience. And I learned a ton working on this, and it's been a pleasure talking to you guys about it today. And I would like to bring up Moira Smiley one last time to sing a song for us.
Yeah, Moira.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And I'd like to even set it up a little bit further, which is that at the end of
Give him the mic back. Give him the mic back, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. At the end of the sanctuary of Paul Kooming, the 5 federal marshals came in, and they were actually pretty gentle souls, according to Paul, and they were Catholic, and they genuflected, of course, when they came in to arrest Paul. And his arresting officer said, "I won't put you in handcuffs if you promise not to run." And Paul said, "I won't run." And they started to walk out the door, and it was about 7 in the morning, and everyone was standing up, everyone was sleeping in the pews, and one by one people stood up and spontaneously broke into Amazing Grace. And so, Moira, if you would sing.
Oh, and that, in listening to the podcast, broke me. I was driving somewhere and just thinking of that knowledge, or this thing that was held sacred, as part of the power of justice work. You know, this idea of agreeing this is sacred is so powerful. So it kind of gave new meaning to singing this song. So, amazing grace,
How sweet the sound
that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. In the second verse, 'twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears released. How precious is that grace appears the hour I first believed. Yes, and can I just say, as I'm not a Catholic, but I have some shared history, and I'm not a Christian, but I am deeply, deeply inspired by this moment that you beautifully tell of in this podcast. So thank you, Brendan, for that, and thanks for this. It's my honor. And is this the end? And we should close with a song, another song?
Yes.
Okay. Can we just sing this beautiful anthem that takes us forward, written by a current songwriter based in Brooklyn. Her name is Jean Rowe.
Oh, sure.
And Dean has just recorded this song, and it's, I think, a perfect sending us forward kind of song. It's called Arise, Arise. It's kind of a new anthem. Yeah, it takes a lot of the medicine that you've been talking to us about. And it says, arise, arise. I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. Yeah. And she starts out, well, Dean tunes. She says, Atlantic and Pacific flow, The Great Lakes and the Gulf of Mexico, the land between, sustains us all to cherish it, our tireless call. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire and lift our voices from the fire. So
let's kind of have half voice, half guitar here.
Yeah. I'll let you do the verses. This is great. Actually, I can be your voice. Yeah.
You can be my voice and my mic stand.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
You're all going to sing that chorus, right? Once more. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire and lift our voices from the fire. Okay, you're going to be ready for this? It's kind of a funny thing I do. Atlantic and Pacific flow, the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, to the Gulf of Mexico, to the Gulf of Mexico, to the Gulf of Mexico. The land between sustains us all. To nourish her is our fervent call. Here we go. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire and lift our voices from the fire. We reach these shores from distant lands. We came with hungry hearts and hands. Some came by force and some by will. To the auction block darkened mill. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire and lift our voices from the fire. And we died in your fields and your factories, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. An old coat hanger in a room somewhere, a trail of tears, an electric chair. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire and lift our voices from the fire. I sang this in Camden, Maine just a couple weeks ago. My friend David Dodson's annual fall show. It was a sanctuary with maybe 200 people in it. And during the course of the song, we slowly started to stand up. And it being a national anthem, what do you think? As you are able. And our great responsibility to be guardians of our liberty, till tyrants bend to the people's dreams, and justice flows like a mighty stream. Once more, arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. We lift our voices from the fire. It's been really marvelous. And, we could have about 10 minutes worth of Q&A. We always kind of like to finish at 1 because we start getting hungry and we start smelling Luis Guzman's food, who's preparing our luncheon. But I just want to ask more about this podcast is full of just great stories and of trials of some other actions like the one in Camden, where at the end of the trial, it seemed like the jury was obviously going in the direction of not guilty and even expressing their not guiltiness during the course of the trial. And the song that was sung, the great Mandela, and then at the end, when the guilty verdict was read, they all sang Amazing Grace together. Having been a lot in courtrooms as a Spanish interpreter, it's like that's just the most unimaginable possible scenario.
And the jury judge joined in.
The jury joined in and the judge? How about the prosecutor? That was the coolest story. And I think of just all the connections. You were able to interview Howard Zinn and the Berrigans. These are all people who are very important part of this church, spoke many times. We have cassettes, 40 years of cassettes that we hope to eventually get going on digitizing one after the other. All of their different addresses to the Community Church of Boston. When we used to meet in a big auditorium at Boston University, Morris Auditorium during the 80s. Some of you remember that. And so it's just, it hits home, just bringing this all together right here. So is there anybody else who would like to say hello and say something? Even people who are online, there are several people online I noticed would really appreciate their presence. The Shusharts, for example, from the House of Peace in Ipswich. We send you our greetings. These are some folks that have been just active in the struggle for such a long time. And also send greetings out to some young people who are like these people in the late 60s. A young journalist whose name I won't say, but who published a beautiful article about us and our connection to Sacramento in the Harvard Crimson, and who also is very active. This is why I won't say her name, in an alternative newspaper out of Harvard that's called the Harvard Crime Scene, and who writes about the connections between Harvard's endowment and genocide in Gaza, and the connections between a bunch of different figures on that campus. So that, just little connections like that that bring us to inspiration from young people about the way forward. And it'd be great to hear from some of the young groups who meet here. DSA, 3 different committees, Extinction Rebellion, Sunrise Movement. Hello.
Hi. Anything to say about the draft Dr. Rag or your Phil Like the Cal song? How it fits in? Anything?
Oh, I didn't understand you.
The draft Dodger Rag.
Oh, yeah, Phillips.
And your flag and Cal won't get into heaven.
Oh, what was the second?
Your flag decal won't get you into heaven. John Progan.
Oh, John.
Yes. But the timing of that and anything.
Oh yeah, the draft. I love the draft Dodger Rag. I wanted to actually use it in the from Phil Oaks. It's so funny. It's so brilliant. I wanted to use it, but we couldn't get the rights, so I couldn't get it in the actual podcast. But that's such a fantastic song.
On December 19th, we will be doing this holiday show, and it happens to be Phil Oaks' birthday that day, and we will be joined by Phil Oaks' niece, Robin Oaks, who lives here and is good friends with the Magpie folks.
Oh, so amazing.
I have a question for you. Brendan, do you find that your students at Pace are talking about this kind of thing, like as 20-somethings, just barely, end of teens? Are they talking about these kinds of ideals that, and that you get to share this kind of story with them? Or are they kind of thinking in different ways?
It's a great question, right? Because I spend a lot of time now with. Thank you, Moira. I spend a lot of time now with 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, much more than I ever did. It's really fascinating to see their view on the world. They have a lot of obstacles they're very concerned that I can see. And we came up with a plan for if ICE ever came to our building, we have a plan to make sure that they cannot get in the building and get at our vulnerable students. And all of the students are very activated about that. But they are also up against the algorithms, or the ways that they are lured into not engaging with one another. And that is something that really concerns me as I had an acting class the other day, and I was like, let's take a 5-minute break. And it was dead silent in the room. And I looked up, I thought everyone had left for a second. I looked up and there were about 12 kids, and they were all looking at their phones. You know what I mean? They're 20-year-olds who should all be just like saying jokes and farting and yelling at each other and slapping high fives and stuff like that. But it said they were dead silent, and they were in their own sort of bubbles. And that is something that I think they are all facing. And that is a major obstacle for all of us, is the ways in which Silicon Valley puts us in our own cones of information that confirms what we already believe. And aren't able to really challenge each other. So that's something that I try and get them away from their pocket. Somebody likes me slot machines, you know what I mean? I have notifications, somebody likes me, and I try and tell them that your notifications are training you to feel liked, and that is bad, you know? So they're pure of heart in a major way, and they want to protect one another from what is coming. And they are up against much more sinister forces of commerce than we ever were. And I haven't figured out what the solution to that is yet, to sort of bring them a little bit out of that cloud that they fog, I should say, that they're in. But that's where things are at at the moment. Yeah.
I have a question on.
Yeah, wait till you get the mic.
My name is Joe Cabatas. I'm a veteran for peace, and I was discharged from Vietnam in 1972 when I went to the Paula Center, and there was all sorts of sermons against the wall. I mean, it was just unbelievable. They even had pictures of bombs falling on North Vietnam as they were talking about the evils of war. All right, and now I think about it, I say to myself, that was 50 years ago. And there was so much anti-war sentiment in the Paula Center. I go to the Paula Center now. I'm part of the Pax Christi, which is a Catholic peace group. There's 4 or 5 of us. We're not allowed to give out any flyers at the church, at the Paula Center. And even on Ash Wednesday, I went down to Arch Street Church to give out applications for the Pax Christi. And they were going to call the police and kick me out. I mean, that was like unbelievable. And then I was thinking of what happened for 20 years. The community center, the community church here, started a peace vigil out in Copley Square, 2001. There were 30 of us. Now there's only 2. We meet every 4 to 5 on Tuesday. We're still there. And I think back on it, the Berrigan brothers, all these, Martin Luther King, William Sloane Coffin, all these people in the church were totally against the war. Yeah. And I think back in the past 20 years of the Afghan war, nothing. Yeah. I mean, very few. I mean, there was Archbishop Fenster from New Mexico brought out an anti-nuclear war paper, and John Deere were Catholic churches. And I mean, there was plenty of people in the community church speaking about against the war. But basically, it went on 20 years with absolutely no anti-war. I can't understand that. What happened? Even the Paula Center, they don't mention it. I mean, the churches, they haven't really talked about an anti-war sermon. I've had about 2 or 3 in the Catholic Church in 20 years. And then, I mean, that's my experience.
Yeah. Oh. Thank you. You know, it's one thing that Mary, and you can speak maybe more to this, that Mary Ann has often talked about, is that the Catholic Church had an opportunity with this class of Vatican II priests and nuns that came in the 60s and 70s. But as the church kind of folded in on itself and
and clawed back a lot of their reforms in the late 60s and early 70s. There was a giant exodus of priests and nuns. Everyone I knew growing up, there were, ex-priests, ex-nuns, and people who had left the clergy. And it seems like the Catholic Church missed out on a class of clergy that would have absolutely swept the world with messages like you're talking about, like anti-war messages. That would not be an absence, I feel like, if the church had realized the talent it had on its hands for social justice, that it sort of expunged in or let slip through its fingers through its sort of conservative traditionalism in the early 70s. Would you say that's? I mean, I'm sort of paraphrasing you a little bit.
Last thing, because I think like so many of our institutions, but particularly like the church or the military, or it served its own hierarchical, patriarchal power. I mean, what it became was an institution that yielded power rather than for me anyways, finding over the last 50 years a place where the faith was celebrated, where Jesus is throwing tables over because of the injustice that was seen. It was that kind of church that we would be looking for. But instead, it was dominated by holding on to the power that it had, and the hierarchy and the clergy and the clericalism, and that's what it began to serve, like so many of our other institutions, I feel. And you see little bright lights some places, not a lot. Not a lot. The bishops just came out after how many months and finally had a statement on immigration. And that was just last week. So yeah. So I think like so many other institutions, it too is coming apart at the seams. Right? And we have to reinvent all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening. Great. No, it's welcome. It's a pleasure. It's not that. I was born Catholic myself. Okay. I was raised in a Italian American Catholic family. I did. And I grew up in a family of 7 children that were born 12 years. So but what I was thinking about, this was what I mean personally. I was listening to it. I thought of one word. Imagine for a better world. Bigger.
Thanks, Ed. Just as I walk up here, a reminder about Community Church's origins, which was in deep opposition to the carnage, which was World War I, and in opposition to war profiteering that happened then, and in support of conscientious objectors. Those are the first entries that we have in our archives on the 5th floor. So this is just right up our alley in many ways. Lunch is on its way, and it looks like it started raining a little bit. So let's get cozy and put out some tables and continue the conversation. I want to say one more thing, which is that when you leave, there's a lobby with a whole bunch of books that are the legacy of our beloved departed John Livingston. Those books all have to leave for a great reason, which is that tomorrow we have a big transition. We've been working on a Sacrament archive that we inherited from one of the world's top scholars on the Sacramento Vanzetti case who collected primary source materials. Jerry Kaplan, our beloved volunteer, has spent 3 days a week for 4 years putting it all together, getting it ready for transfer to the Boston Public Library. And it's going to happen tomorrow, and it's really momentous. It adds to their existing Sacramento Vanzetti collection by about 70%. So as you walk out, look at the books, and you might find something good. This was somebody who had really great taste in reading and studying and writing. The more you take with you, the less we'll have to send to a wonderful organization called More Than Words. It's just a couple blocks away. So, Brendan, thank you again. And come see us anytime. Marianne, we'd love to hear from you again anytime, and ideas for more on this, on how to keep the flame alive. Thank you all for being here today. There is a basket with some dollar bills in it. Please help us make this thing keep going. There's also an option for credit card or PayPal on our website, communitychurchofboston.org. Thank you to all of you who joined us on Zoom and who are live on YouTube and can hear it on YouTube forever until we get deplatformed or whatever by the platforms, which happens, and it could very easily happen to us. So keep that in mind as you go out into the rainy day or stay for lunch. Thank you, Mr. Smiley, por el rico almuerzo que nos has preparado.